Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. I just want to welcome you to the University Counseling Center's workshop to help support parents, guardians, and family to help, find tips to help your college students transition well during this time. I am the clinical care coordinator and crisis care coordinator at the University Counseling Center. That means I meet with students who come to our office in crisis, and I'll meet with them briefly to help stabilize their symptoms and help them to connect to whether it's a provider at our office or a provider in the community, or even if they need a higher level of care, I help follow them through that treatment transition. In this season, we have noticed that there have been, students definitely in need of services due to their own grief, loss, anxiety, and symptoms of depression. And so we want to share with you all how to help your students during this time to empower them and to thrive during times of transition. I invite you to be open in the chat and ask questions as they come up. If you feel that it pertains to everyone, if it's a specific question about your own student, or a question that you may have that's more personal, you can in the chat direct the question to Dr. Nathaniel Fernandez, who is my co-host today. He is our outreach coordinator and he will manage the chat. And then we'll also save about 10 minutes at the end to read questions aloud at the end of the presentation to discuss further. So I'm going to turn it over to Nathaniel to introduce himself as well.
Yeah, thank you, Patricia. And again, as Patricia noted, my name's Nathaniel. I am the outreach coordinator for the counseling center. I'm happy to be here supporting Patricia today. Please, feel free to private message me anything you'd like to private message, or message the chat. I can respond with you there, and we won't have to uh, uh, take any the moment a question comes up, we can answer it that way. What's one of the nice things about Zoom. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. This is being recorded, so I think it asks for your permission before joining, but feel free, you can leave your video off if you prefer. And definitely, if you keep yourself muted until the end, if you have a question, just so that everybody can hear the presentation best. And so the settings for the meeting, if you want to be able to just benefit from the slides, you want to pin me as a speaker. That way you just see the slides during the presentation. And then again, send questions directly through the chat. And again, if any doesn't get answered, we are open right now during the summer. So if parents need us to follow up via email or setting up a phone consult, we can do that as well. And I will also email you all a copy of my slides along with our resource list that you will see today during the presentation. So today we're going to talk about the impact of COVID, strategies to help students cope, how to model self-compassion and grace, empowering students to reconnect on campus, and review campus resources. The impact of COVID has lasted longer than we expected. We have all experienced losses and had to quickly adapt to online learning and sheltering in place. This may have been more difficult for some of us depending on our home situations. Specifically for students that were living on campus, that transition may have been really difficult. Or for new incoming students, the transition of maybe losing their senior year and having that be all online has been a difficult process as well. The fall may bring a new space for students to start healing from what they experienced this past year. So this is a time to be intentional and allow your students to kind of encourage them to ask themselves how they are feeling, what they are looking forward to, and what do they need in this season to thrive and help others along the way. It's important as parents, guardians, and family members to also allow ourselves to process and share our fears and losses rather than ignore them. And that way we're being genuine with what we're feeling and experiencing. So one of the first activities I wanted us to do is to even share in the chat what one of your losses has been, if you're open to doing that, as some of us may have those similar losses as well. To share from my own personal experience, I had a student last year, 2 years ago, graduate from high school and start college during the middle of the pandemic. And that was really hard, just the transition of not having, welcome weekend, being able to go on campus and really connect with other families, and knowing that, he was doing all his classes online was really hard for me as a parent. So I imagine for some of us, it may be similar. And so this is an activity that you could also do with your student at home, is letting them know, like, this is what I have felt this season during COVID. This is what I feel that I have lost. And what's one thing you have lost? And as parents and family members, we want to practice that feeling of being able to attune ourselves to our students. So just being open to what they're saying and doing that reflective listening. So not saying, oh, you shouldn't worry or you shouldn't feel anxious, but acknowledging that maybe they are feeling those things. There has been emotional impact in coping with the impact of COVID. Some of us have felt grief, isolation, stress at home. There's been this sense of powerlessness for college students. There has been screen burnout. And one of the quotes that I picked is by Kobayashi Isa, that shares that in a world of grief and pain, flowers bloom even then. And so there's a sense that we can even come stronger out of a crisis if we really lean into our ability to have resiliency at this time. So recognizing first that this is an event that has impacted us all in different ways. We've seen those impact in ways that have at times had a cost of human loss. It's important to remember that what you have experienced could be very different from what the person next to you may have experienced in the last year. And especially for students as they transition back to going in person for classes, recognizing that their experiences may be really different from those around them. Students, especially, have lost the social connection of being with peers in person day to day and doing learning together. And so, as a family members, we want to validate that loss for our students. We want them to recognize that that has been hard. And also recognize that at times we may have seen them in their room on their computer thinking, oh, you're really not working. What are you doing? But it is really exhausting being on Zoom, writing notes, kind of tracking your assignments. So just recognize that they have really adapted their learning during this time and affirm them during this time. We also want them to create new meaning during this time. So encourage them that maybe this is a time for them to join a new student group, or this might be a time for them to connect with our campus ministry, to join a discipleship group, or to connect with our Student Center for Reconciliation and Diversity to join an ethnic student organization. A lot of our groups may start meeting in person, or some of them may continue to meet virtually, but those times of connection are really important. Research shows that we thrive in community, and this time of transition will take work to build your support system back up. So, you want to talk to your students beforehand on how they can do that. Can they schedule a FaceTime chat with their roommate? Can they meet with their RA for coffee to get oriented to campus before classes start? And then also there's this process of recognizing that as families, we may have all struggled during the season, working from home, helping younger or children do homeschool, while also maintaining your own role as a caregiver or as a provider. So acknowledge, if any, what stress came up for you and share with your college student how you may have struggled too. This helps normalize for them that they're not alone and that it's okay to experience distress. And then also recognizing the stress at home of sharing a space and being together all the time may have been really difficult for young adults when at this stage of their development, they really yearn for that peer connection. Screen burnout, so being on the computer for classes, also left many students feeling physically and emotionally drained. They are being expected to perform at the highest capacity while adapting to a pandemic and not having the natural resources of the peer and teacher interaction for support. Help students see where they struggle this year and come up with a plan on how they will ensure their needs get met this year. Do they need to set up tutoring? We have that available even virtually right now at APU. Or maybe they need to apply for a Gen 1 mentor. So that's mentors for first generation college students. That way they increase their support and accountability. And we also have academic success coaches through our academic advising office and also through our accessibility and disability office. So recognizing that this is still a stage of transition and it's also a period of anticipation, unknown, but we can also still have hope and look forward to the steps that we can make moving forward. So right now, as we see different emotional responses on this slide, just recognizing that everyone could be at a different place. And so sometimes for some of us, we may feel anger, like, why do people feel this way if I don't feel it? So part of this experience is really building the capacity to be empathetic to one another and really lean in to how an experience of someone else in your circle may be different. Even though we're coming back on campus, there may be continued disruptions to daily routine. Maybe now your students have to build a commute time to coming back to campus, finding a parking space, finding a place to study on campus, or adjusting to new work schedules. There may still be different reopenings to things and maybe limitations to some things. So really helping your student to recognize like this is a season to be flexible and to recognize that change may be ongoing. And there also may be the difficulty of they may not feel ready to return in-person classes, and maybe that's all that will be offered. And so really helping them recognize what's in their control and what they need to do to feel safe. So it's important to name that the same events or situations can create very different emotions for us all. You could even find yourself having thoughts of judgment, surprise, or disbelief at some of the emotions listed here if you haven't experienced them in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's important to name that all of these emotions are valid and that they are a normal response to the stressors of last year. They are also a normal response to newness of adjusting to the rhythm of the 2021-2022 academic year. So our next slide is we're going to focus on strategies to help students cope. So one again is recognizing that we're still in this stage of uncertainty. So take time, even as parents, family members, maybe even write down what are your worries that you have for your student in this season. Then ask yourself how likely these worries are to come true. And if they do come true, what can you put in place to help you cope with that? So if one of your fears is, I'm worried that my student won't make any friends, that will make them feel lonely and then maybe feel disconnected from class. So maybe one of the things you build in is how do we make sure they're plugged in to some type of group or connection on campus so they have that social support set up. So that would be a good, conversation to have with your student of, let's write down our worries and discuss what's in our control and what can we set up to help mitigate the stress that might come up from these opportunities. Remind our students that they can be a thermostat or a thermometer. They can be the one that creates joy in the room and changes the atmosphere. And that's something that is in the power to do. If we allow our mood to be based on our circumstances, then we're operating from a closed mindset. And this is a time to adapt a growth mindset. According to Dr. Carol Dweck, in a fixed mindset, people believe their qualities are fixed traits and therefore cannot change. These people draw on their intelligence and talents rather than working to develop and improve them. They also believe that talent alone leads to success and effort is not required. Alternatively, in a growth mindset, people have an underlying belief that their learning and intelligence can grow with time and experience. When people realize they can get smarter, stronger, faster, they realize that their effort has an effect on their success. So they put in extra time, leading to higher achievement. So one tip to help college students transition well is to help them evaluate what they need to thrive during this time. So adapted from an article in the selecthealth.org blog is recognizing that there are certain things that we can focus on. So we can look ahead and not backward. So what does that look like? So that means that you can't change what once was, but you can choose how to live your life now. If looking into the past and longing for the past isn't doing you any favors, you can now choose to look ahead, focus on the future. Visualize who you want to be, what you want to learn, and where you want to end up during this challenging time. And then encourage your student to look for opportunities for refinement, ways that they can grow in this season. This isn't always easy, but if you choose to change your mindset, you'll be amazed at how much you can grow and learn during this transition. You also want to think of how can you just focus on taking one day at a time? So when dealing with change, it's normal to want to get used to everything this change is throwing at you right now. Like, I have to, go back to class. I have to figure out who I'm going to live with. I have to figure out how I'm going to manage my budget now. But then trying to do everything all at once becomes unrealistic. So this is a good time to just practice living one day at a time and focusing on one thing at a time. Change takes time and practice. So instead of trying to do it all now and growing frustrated, give yourself time to figure these things out. Add yet to the end of your thoughts. For example, I don't know how I will do in this class yet, or I can't figure this roommate thing out yet. Don't focus on the end result. Focus on what small steps you can take slowly today to work towards where you want to be. Slow and steady always wins the race. Another quick tip is encouraging your students to keep a journal. During times of transition, allowing yourself to have a place to really reflect on what you're thinking and feeling can be a really good sense of coping. It helps you recognize what transitions you're experiencing and can help you understand your feelings better and may help you explore the why behind them. Pay special attention to any thoughts that are negative from the past or unkind toward yourself. Recognizing those thoughts can help you choose more positive thoughts. And in the future, when you're facing another change, you can look back on how much you were able to overcome. Another tip is to surround yourself with support. So making sure your student knows who is their support system. When can they call on you for support? Making sure they've reconnected to friends and build those social relationships back up. When we have a support system, we're able to manage stress more effectively. So encourage them, tell them to not be afraid to reach out for help from us at the University Counseling Center, join one of our support groups, or even online through a social media community if that helps them have a sense of connection. Connection is key in navigating challenges and gaining wisdom from others who are facing circumstances. So you just want to ask your students what would be helpful to them for you to text them in the morning and encourage them, or maybe scheduling a once a week dinner FaceTime call where you guys can share a meal together virtually, or maybe it's sending a care package in the mail. So this is the time to really ask what their needs are and what are ways that you as the family can support them. We also want to model and encourage our students to practice acceptance. So even when you think your circumstances aren't fair or wish they hadn't happened, nothing you think or say will really change that. So even though change is inevitable, you can choose to accept reality and be willing to grow, or you can choose to live in resistance and bitterness. So acceptance is always the easier and more fulfilling way to go. And there are many resources to help you start. Another tip is to create a list of affirmations or mantras. So, what can you say to yourself each day to be reminded of your strength and resilience? Example, like if this test doesn't go well, I can still be okay. Or I have survived difficult changes before and I will survive this. So, again, when you're looking at this conversation with your students, you're focusing on those areas of their life. How are they going to transition well emotionally, physically, spiritually, and mentally? We also, as parents, guardians, and family members, have the ability to influence the college students in our lives. We must practice giving ourselves compassion and grace during times of transition. Allow ourselves to be forgiving when we struggle. Be realistic of what you can commit to during this season. Let your students know like they don't have to join 10 clubs. Maybe it's joining one organization or one group, and focusing on building, one friendship at a time. Also, empower students to really use their schedule to create times of restoration. This could be with exercise, meditation, prayer, quiet time, and also having times of connection, of when they will connect with others. Also, the University Counseling Center offers great workshops and groups that can help students build their coping skills with managing symptoms of stress and sadness. Practicing grace is allowing ourselves to still be loving to ourselves and treating ourselves like we would treat a friend. So, being aware of our inner voice and catching our thoughts, and recognize we do not need to own every thought we have. Biblically, in Romans 12:2, we're reminded that God wants us to renew our mind and allow our thoughts to be life giving. Encourage your student to be aware of how they speak about themselves and be the ones that speak life into them daily. There's 5 ways when we think about modeling self-compassion that I'm going to review with you. Step 1 is practice forgiveness. So stop punishing yourself for your mistakes, accept that you are not perfect, and be gentle with yourself when you are confronted with your shortcomings. You are valued by your friends and colleagues because of who you are, not because you are perfect. So become aware of the times when you derive a sense of self-worth from performance or perfection. Understand that you do not need to be a certain way to be worthy of love. One way to remind yourself that you are worthy, even when you're not performing well, is to put a sticky note near your desk or in your wallet with a message reminding you to be gentle and kind with yourself. There's no sense in punishing your future for the mistakes of your past. So practice doing forgiveness, growing from it, and then letting it go. And then again, step two, where I'm talking about employing the growth mindset again. And so this is a great area if you want more information, to even go on Google and look for Carol Dweck's research, as she has really talked a lot about this topic of the growth mindset. And it's the impact of how our mindset affects our well being. She found that whether we have a fixed or growth mindset influences our happiness. So, one question to ask yourself is, do you view challenges as impossible obstacles or as opportunities to grow? Employing a growth mindset is more helpful. So, embrace rather than avoid challenges, persist in finding meaning in them, and don't give up on yourself. When you find you are criticizing yourself and negatively comparing yourself with others, try to find inspiration in your successes and strengths instead of feeling threatened. You also want to express gratitude. So, feeling gratitude is very powerful. According to Emmons and McLeod, they talk about that when we wish for what we don't have, there we're left in this sense of, feeling without, like I don't have this. But then there's strength in appreciating what you do have right now. So you can choose to write a gratitude journal or go for a gratitude walk, where you really just allow your thoughts to be focused around the theme of gratitude. By focusing on your blessings, we employ a gentler inner voice and we move the focus away from our shortcomings and outward to the world with all its beauty. Step four, oh, so it doesn't, there it is. Step four is find the right level of generosity. So one of authors of Raj Raghunathan has identified three different reciprocity styles: someone who's a giver, a taker, and a matcher. Givers are the most generous people, and generosity is a great way of employing compassion. However, givers can be both the most successful and least successful people, as they may fall into the pattern of selfless giving that ignores their own needs. So, for generosity to work in your favor of your well being, it cannot be selfless. So, when being generous, make sure you are aware of your own needs before progressing. Then consciously choose the recipient of your generosity, the resources you have available, and your level of energy based on what will support your own well being. So, recognizing too, for our students, they may go into a form of people pleasing and wanting to have, all their roommates love them, that maybe they're the ones doing all the cleaning or they're the ones doing all the cooking, but they're going to burn out that way. So, you want to make sure that they have a balance of being generous to those around themselves, but also setting healthy limits and boundaries so that they're not feeling taken advantage of. Step five is to be mindful. So, mindfulness has been found to have a positive impact on self compassion, as it has a tendency to lessen self judgment. So, strive to always be in the moment and to be aware of what is happening right now without judgment and labeling. Allow what you think or feel to have its moment. Don't give it, this magnifying glass, but allow it to come, and then without attachment, let it go. And then when we're looking at how do we support our students, this is really the time that we want to empower them to launch. So this is a great time to talk with your students about relationships and how this transition may call for building new connections with one another. A great skill to practice at home right now is open communication. Having them practice giving you eye contact, having an open body language, and using the reflective listening of where again you share back what you heard them say. Students who build one or two meaningful relationships, um, research shows, will have a greater sense of belonging in college. They don't need to have 10 great friends and join multiple groups, but again, really developing those one or two core friendships can be really healthy for them. So have them focus on building that relationship with one peer and continue to get to know people in each environment, in class, in their work study positions, in their residence halls and student groups, or if they want to join a discipleship group or even ask for a peer mentor. As parents and guardians, our goal is to help our students launch into adulthood and encourage them. Again, one way would be if they're living on campus, maybe it's encouraging them to stay on campus on the weekend and not come home right away, because you want them to also build those natural connections of living life on campus with their student community. Having family connections will be important too. So maybe talking to your student of what that will look like. Again, is it one text in the morning or doing a coffee chat once a week? And maybe it's visiting them, once a month in the beginning to kind of give them that sense of helping them to thrive first before they come home. Also recognizing that there's various opportunities on campus for them to connect. I'm highlighting different offices that offer these groups and meetings. And so this could be a good way for you to kind of sit with your student, explore the website together and see, what fits them well. In college, it may seem as though there's never enough time, right, to finish what needs to be done. But really encouraging your students to develop a social life is really healthy because it expands their social circle and helps them to not feel, isolated during this time. Not only is socializing beneficial for your health, happiness, and your self confidence, but it's also a great way to learn outside of the classroom. So one tip is to make sure your social life, can make studying easier. So helping students to study in groups helps them understand the information better and helps them keep accountability and have a sense of connection even during studying. There's also the benefit of culture exposure, especially during this time of racial tensions and a trauma for our students of color. Encouraging your students to connect with people outside of their culture, outside of their race, is a great way to bridge those connections. So, exposing yourself to a variety of social situations, whether it's joining a club, going to a party, or eating dinner with friends in Azusa, allows students to develop relationships with people from other states, cultures, and countries. So expanding your social circle will help college students form cross-cultural connections as well as develop a greater world perspective. So interacting with people who come from different backgrounds will teach your students about life than any more than any college course will. So there's no better time than now to really help them expand their social circle. Socializing also helps keep you emotionally stable. As humans, we're inherently social. So having that time of interaction helps us to stay stable and feel connected. When you think about it, have you ever noticed how much better you feel and less stressed you feel after talking to a friend if you've had a hard day? So maybe recognizing how do you build that into your routine of having those times of connection. Recognizing you don't want your college student to neglect their emotions. So, really embrace talking about your feelings at home and making that normal so that they feel comfortable sharing how they feel. Also, taking times to, some students can even take like a 1 credit class of, yoga or a sport. That really helps improve, their stress management as well as having built in time for exercise. Um, Socializing also helps build their self confidence. Surrounding yourself with people who like you for who you are boosts your self esteem and encourages personal growth. During college, you may be placed in social situations that can be out of your comfort zone and make you feel vulnerable. But if you push yourself to interact with others, you can develop your social skills and build your self confidence. Your college social life can also impact your future. The social life you choose to have in college can greatly affect your future endeavors. The friends you make in college will become coworkers and allies in the workforce. You have already started building your professional network, so keep it up. And sooner or later, you'll realize that it's all about who you know. So, this is a great way for them to start establishing those relationships with one another. I'm going to review some of our campus resources. So, like I shared about the University Counseling Center, we offer different groups and workshops. So, even as parents, if you have questions, you can email us, go to our website. If your student knows that they want some ongoing support for this time in their life, they can already go online, complete forms online about what they're looking for, and give us a call and let us know whether they need to meet with someone for a one-time solution session now during the summer or kind of learn more about what we'll offer during the fall. Our intakes for ongoing services will start the last week of August. And during this time, we'll also be offering in-person sessions and telehealth. So for those students who prefer doing telehealth, we do have that option. Then we have our Office of Campus Ministry, where students can request pastoral counseling with one of our pastors. And this is something they can also do virtually during this season or connect hopefully in person once we're back on campus. Our Office of Accessibility and Disability Resources helps students who have a disability, whether that is emotional or mental health or a physical disability. This is a great resource if they know that they need that support, is to complete this application now They have information on their website. They can also set up a virtual appointment with one of the staff at that office, and that helps them to build an accommodation plan for their learning based on their disability. We also have our Student Center for Reconciliation and Diversity. This is the office that manages all our different student ethic organizations. So this is like the Black Student Association, LASA, our student group for Latinx students. And so if you have any questions about that or want to know about programming, you can also look at their program on their website. And then our Campus Life office will be doing a Welcome Back to the Zoo event that hopefully you've gotten information about. If not, you can also go onto their website and find out more about it, as they'll be doing some live workshops and programming for returning students as well. And then reviewing a little bit more in depth the University Counseling Center workshop, I want to share with you some of the workshops that we offered this past year that were really helpful. Is one called Learning to Thrive During Difficult Times. So this workshop is designed to help students thrive in the midst of the difficult season. It's a one-time commitment. We meet for about an hour and 45 minutes virtually, going through different exercises and helping students really recognize what they've gone through during this time and how to help build their coping skills in adjusting. We also offer a really great anxiety toolbox, which is a 2-week commitment and really teaches students strategies to cope with anxiety and helping them develop a plan for how they will manage it moving forward. And then we have a great peer support that is run by our peer educators. It's called Wellness Wednesday. So these are non-therapy groups that are student-led and provide opportunities to build community while learning and practicing techniques to balance your emotional well-being. So definitely, even as parents, encourage you to follow us on Instagram and make sure that your student is following us as well, as we'll often post about different workshops and have different resources available to them. Our groups are more of a time commitment. It might be like a 6 to 8 week time commitment, but this really helps develop some more internal coping skills for students that may need that further support. We have our self-growth group, which is a group for students who are interested to better understanding themselves and others. I run our women's emotional support group. So this is designed to help women increase their ability to use safe coping skills, to reduce self-harm, substance abuse, and to better navigate the effects of trauma. For other students that have done this group, they have really gained a sense of connection with knowing they're not alone and really benefited from that concrete skill building that we do, once a week when we meet together. And so if your student is interested in any of these groups, again, their process would be to give us a call, and then we would set up what's called a solution session to review it with them. And then we could see what, if the times and days fit with their schedule. We have a Building Better Boundaries group, which from my understanding, they can come as much as they want or come to all of them. But this is a really great skill to help students develop ways to set and communicate boundaries that are essential to their health, well-being, and their safety. And we're actually starting our Students of Color group again, which during this season is a really great space for students of color to feel seen and known and can speak from their heart rather than worrying about what is socially acceptable. It's a supportive and therapeutic environment where students have the opportunity to deepen self-understanding and explore ways of relating to others. I'm now going to pass it over to Dr. Nathaniel Fernandez to share with us more about this resource.
Yeah, and thank you, Patricia. One thing that your students might also be interested in is our Cougar Care program, which is a 6 sessions workshops. They're 90 minutes each, and they train students with skills to help themselves and others. And it's also a resume building opportunity, a career skill building opportunity, especially if your student is maybe interested in sociology, psychology, social work, nursing, other related helping fields. It can be a great opportunity for them. So these will be offered in the fall, and I highly encourage folks to come check them out.
Carry on. Thank you so much, Nathaniel. And so I also second that's a great way to kind of build in some support on Friday afternoons and have students really have some tangible resources of what to do during this season. So I'm just opening it now for questions and comments. While I was doing the presentation, I didn't know if anything came up in the chat. Nathaniel, was there anything that came up that you want to share out loud?
No general questions. Maybe you want to stop the recording now so that everyone can feel free to ask any questions that they might have. But also, if there's no questions, that's fine too. Feel free to Unmute yourselves and ask questions or type them in the chat.